What a masterpiece. We're working on table doilies next.
So, once more into the breach.
And 3, 2, 1. Oh! That would be bad.
The boomerang's back, and this time it's taken out the goal can.
Shockingly, that didn't work. I can't imagine why.
The crew comes to the rescue with a camera bag that could have been custom made for slingshotting. The goalposts, on the other hand, clearly weren't, and they're bent out of shape.
So everybody's clear here. Those things break, it's going right to where you are. Okay?
Yeah.
So, camera guys, everybody, this is now very precarious thing. It may not be a lot of force, but it's going to be moving really quickly if it goes.
With the slingshot on its last legs, can they get the launch they need to complete the testing?
All right. Ready in 3, 2, 1.
Well, Adam, I'd say that worked pretty well.
I think it did.
Right at the last, success.
Jamie, that's 77 feet.
For the first time, we're starting to get some activity with this projectile that is like what we'll expect to see with a full-sized human. We launched an 8-kilogram projectile around 70 feet or so, and that's about 1/10 of a human. We need to be able to launch it farther than 70 feet, but at least we're starting to get into that world. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm getting kind of tired of all this test firing of these projectiles. I think we've crunched the numbers enough. It's time to build the real thing.
You know, from just a cost standpoint, let alone a physics standpoint, tossing him 200 yards, I think, is completely ridiculous. We're talking something like 12,000 pounds of pulling force to throw him that distance. I reckon we ought to shoot for the world record for a human cannonball, which is about 200 feet. By my math, that would give us about 40 bands of 1-inch surgical tubing, 10 feet long, 20 on each side, about a final pulling force of 4,000 pounds, which seems easily doable.
Okay, and so we don't have to build this massive structure that is a one-use only sort of a deal. I'd recommend that we go with radio towers, a truss structure that we can guy wire out.
Excellent. I think that's a great idea. Man, if we build this thing, this has to be the largest slingshot anybody has ever built.
The plan for the final rig is elegantly simple. 2 radio towers will form the V-shaped yoke. An array of guy wires will hold them in place. And the sling itself will comprise 40 10-foot lengths of 1-inch surgical tubing. Seems straightforward enough. Time to build the world's biggest slingshot.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
First, the radio towers, which they've purchased for just $700, must be assembled. And there's some modifications to make to the business ends, where the slings will be attached.
The point of this exercise is to terminate our antenna strut so that it ends at a nice point on both ends. And this just concentrates the load that we put on this. I'm going to be hanging one of these snatch blocks right here. And I want to put the load evenly on all 3 of these bars. I don't want it to overload a single one of them.
Meanwhile, Jamie is busy building a man-sized firing sling.
I guess I'm about the same size as Buster, so this seems about right to me. We don't want to make it too small.
The whole contraption must be light, but extremely strong.
Unfortunately, humans are big, heavy things, usually. And so when you're using them as projectiles, it takes a lot of energy, and it's actually a heck of a lot of work.
Luckily, Jamie's strict recycling policy saves Mythbusters a cool $5 in canvas.
Pretty bloody close. The canvas is mainly to keep these cords neat, because things tend to get tangled and hooked. So it's not going to be structural. We're just going to glue it on.
The Mythbusters arrive at a waterside wasteland where they'll erect their giant slingshot and try to hurl a crash test dummy 200 yards over an imaginary border.
So how far is the 200-yard mark for over the border?
Well, you see those white posts that are way off in the distance there?
Yeah.
That is about 200 yards.
Wow. There's no way he's going to make it that far.
Well, we can try.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a magnificent thing.
They've spent 3 days testing with small-scale rigs, and they're backing a surgical rubber sling to give them their longest shot. The plan is to erect one Goliath of a yoke
Good.
using 2 radio masts,
Perfect.
each one anchored with 3 guy wires.
Ah, yeah. You know, Jamie gets all of his strength from experiments he did with gamma rays back in the 70s.
They've hired long-reach gradals to raise the masts, which are 45 feet long.
Just a little bit farther forward. Stop! That's pretty much exactly right. Out in the sun, making a big slingshot. Well, it's a hell of a thing.
That's way heck up there. I have a feeling that we weren't exaggerating when we said this will be the world's largest slingshot.
Now for the tricky bit, positioning the guy wires so that they support the mast without getting in the way of the slingshot's trajectory. They want to avoid a situation where the dummy is hurled into a guy wire, like this. So they opt for a configuration which they hope will hold up the towers, while leaving the area in the direction of fire guy wire free.
I think we're okay.
I think that's good.
The first 2 guy wires are made fast to a disused railway line. Only when the third is secured will they know if they've got their angles right.
I'm going to go ahead and back the forklift out.
Okay. This is the moment of truth. This is where we learned that we screwed everything up.
Adam tensions up the third guy wire. Cue moment of truth.
Oh. Step.
Yeah.
The guy wires are not forming a wide enough triangle, so instead of supporting the tower, they're pulling it over.
I just lost all my joie de vivre.
The only solution is to cross the 2 guy wires in front of the slingshot. They hope that Buster will fly over the wires and over the border, but there's no guarantee of either.
It's kind of risky, though, because if Buster doesn't go as far or as fast as we think he's going to go, he's going to land on the guy wires, and this whole rig could take a tumble.
It's not a perfect solution, but it's the only one they've got. So they reposition the forward guy wires and check their angles.
I think it's beautiful. I think the cross is nice and far away. The point under the cable is still about 25 feet. We're going to fly at least 25 feet.
Okay, let's do the other one, huh?
All right.
The first tower was the tricky one. Now they've got a system in place. They nail the second one with no trouble at all.
That's it.
All right, then. Last cable.
The last cable is tensioned up. And there's the giant Y of the world's biggest slingshot yoke.
Wow.
Now that it's up, the scale of the border slingshot myth starts to hit home.
A structure like this is not a very mobile structure. This is not something you could pull up with on a flatbed, launch someone, and then be gone before the Border Patrol could catch you.
Even if the border guards somehow failed to notice a major piece of construction taking place on their watch, and the immigrants flying overhead, there's still the issue of the landing on the other side.
We may make our best guess as to where this mattress might go, and I guarantee you we're going to miss it.
The guys swing the sling into place and admire their handiwork.
I think what we've got here is a thing.
Looks like a big-ass slingshot to me.
There's just one more problem to solve.
We'll have to think a little bit about how Buster's going to get held in here
Oh, how to hold him in there.
to keep him from falling down that way.
Right.
It's something to think about.
It's got to let him go.
I know. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yo, I know what you're talking about, man. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
They'll work out how to seat Buster tomorrow when they attempt the horizontal bungee across the border. It's been a long day, so what's the verdict?
This is full on. You know, this thing with the radio towers and everything like that. I don't think anybody else has ever done anything quite like this. Buster's going for a pretty exciting ride tomorrow, I think.
Gotta establish that this is Canada. So I'm gonna throw a Canadian flag up here.
It's 7 a.m. on the day of the big launch, and the build team arrives to